fast forward yini komo e wochoni so aha egi politics avenue ene di yemon right sim na with regards to a year Z9 helicopter crash here isi obuasi Ghana for ehwe nim se enka nimdifo ebetimi amom humene so na enka enhwemu mapa ayese wo moye no na enka aye ntentem na enka yehu ye baaye se de be yanka ebetimi aso anu ntentem kra na nimdifo bi ono oye eye forensic analyst etimi atranse ono so o chiremu se with regards to investigation it will take a year or more and ana yetimi the see pote despite the fact say okuzato abrakwa etimi I invite a US for any China for so mboano eno enye enna asem umbitimi draw conclusions say omobaya it will take a year and ana investigation etimi I'll wrap it up.
That has crashed, the investigation into the crash take. I mean, regardless of the details as we've come to, but if a helicopter crash happens, how long does the investigation take?
Well, Fred, thank you very much for your question. And once again, I usually start my submission by having the bereaved family in our thoughts and in our prayers. I know that very soon it looks like life will become normal, but they are still grieving. So we are still with them. We are still thinking about them. We are praying with them. So that's just on the record. Well, talking about, like I've submitted earlier, aircraft accident investigation, it's a thorough and evidence-driven process. And so just like in any scientific undertaking, I know time sometimes can be what we call the stopper, and resources available can sort of truncate the process. But then, because in this case, it's a military investigation, I think I submitted earlier that if it had been a civil investigation, then most of the time to be bound by the International Civil Aviation Organization Annex 30 standards and recommended practices, so that within the next 30 days, there will be a preliminary hearing or release by the investigator in charge where factual evidence will be presented to the public. And what do I mean by factual evidence? We are talking about things that is seemed in facts. What was the mission of the flight or the purpose of the flight, the crew detail, things regarding their certification, their currency. We'll talk about the aircraft itself, its the various components, the engine make, the aircraft type, the number of hours that the aircraft has flown, the last time it was maintained, all those are factual. Air traffic, communication, whether it was under surveillance, would look at things like the weather that prevailed at that particular point until the last known interaction between the crew and the traffic controller. So these are established where the occurrence took place. And then the investigator would let us know that the process is still ongoing, and hopefully in a year's time, if everything is wrapped up and we have enough evidence, or we've collected enough data to be able to zone in on probable causes and contributory factors, which will help us to be able to come up with the most appropriate safety recommendation or recommendations for safety, will submit the report. In this case, it's a military investigation. The Ghana Air Force has what we call the Ghana Air Force Flying Operation Standards and the Ghana Air Force Aviation Standards. And there is no particular time bar, because what is happening is that the preliminary investigation team has been to the field. They've done their preliminary field assessment or analysis. They've looked at the wreckage. They've done the staking, the crash dynamics, the energy assessment of what probably might have taken place, the capture marks, they've taken photography. Some of the parts have been recovered Remember, the terrain is not the best. I mean, it's quite an austere and hostile high ground. And so the aim will be, as much as possible, if you can retrieve most of the, the aircraft wreckage and bring it down to the hangar to do what we call reconstruction, that would be good. If we cannot, we'll take pictures. I know the first responders, the folks who got there earlier, there were videos. Most the investigator in charge will be interested to get all those videos. They will do some interviews. They will get the maintenance records of the aircraft. And then, of course, they will look at, like I stated earlier, the physiological and psychological state of the crew. They will look at Ghana Air Force, our standards, our levels of compliance, and just make sure that they've assembled all this data, because we have organizational influence. We'll look at levels of supervision, preconditions for the flight. If there were some unsafe things, we call it unsafe actions. So things related to training, equipment, was it appropriate for the flight? And then, of course, we'll zone in on the operators themselves. What was the state of mind? And that normally comes by looking at things like fatigue. And so the amount of data that has to be collected by accident investigators, which will be handed over to what we call a board of inquiry. And they will look at all the data and, based on that, the findings will determine the causal and contributory factors. I cannot, make a prediction as to whether it will be done in 30 days or in 2 weeks or maybe in 4 months. It's a process that is ongoing. But hopefully, since we are tied almost to an extent, I am, in my opinion, envisaging that within a year's time, we should be able to almost zone in on most probable causal and contributory factors.
Within a year, all things being equal?
All things being equal, crossing my hand, hopefully we should be able to get this wrapped up.
I see. And when you talk about a year, there has to be appeal for a lot of patients, because this is a meticulous process. That is,
yes.
It's a factual process, data-driven, flight data recorder. You talk about the cockpit voice recorder, documentary analysis, as you have referenced, interviews that will be done, and the entire process in the midst of the questions, and you see that sense of impatience. People want answers, but at this point, we have to also temper that with a lot of patience. That's what you say, isn't it?
Yes, please. I understand. I know everybody, we want answers now and now and now. But unfortunately, investigators, I get it, the emotions, the anxiety. But one characteristic of every good investigator is that we try to filter out the noise, and then we look at the body of evidence, the corpus of evidence, and then we sift through, and also what we have available to us. The good thing is that the flight data recorder was retrieved from the site. That is just one part of the investigation. Sometimes people get it's conflated. Oh, we have the flight data recorder, so everything is, we are done. No, the flight data recorder only allows us to probe the various flight parameters that the aircraft was able to gather: the altitude, the speed, the location, the engine parameters, the cockpit voice, and in fact, for most standard flight data recorders, they're able to give us about 88 parameters. Okay, so geographical point, the last known point, everything will be captured. Cockpit voice recorder will give us an idea about the information flow on the flight deck, and if there were any alerts on the flight deck, if there were any acoustic patterns within the flight deck area. We will try to match all this together. We will triangulate the information with the interview. Even with the interviews, we have to ensure that there is logical consistency and trustworthiness from what we are getting. So we might go back to folks that we've interviewed earlier based on the factual evidence that maybe you are getting from the flight data recorder or from the field, and reinterrogate them again, the same questions. We want to see that logical consistency because eyewitnesses sometimes are not the most credible. And so you want to interrogate it and keep going back to it. And once we've done that, we assemble all of them, investigators sit down. We have some hypotheses that we've lined up. Those that the evidence doesn't validate, we kick it to the side, and we eventually arrive at maybe a set of hypotheses that is strongly validated by the evidence or the data that we've collected. And it is out of it that we'll be able to hone in on causal and contributory factors. And then eventually we make the safety recommendations, which are pragmatic, which are cost-effective, based on the resources and the constraints that we are faced with, to be able to help the Ghana Air Force to be able to improve their operations. Sometimes we might find certain information which is safety critical that needs to be addressed immediately. And so in that case, what we do is that we immediately tell the Air Force commander, hey, we've identified this, maybe it has to do with some abnormalities with the technical state of the aircraft. I'm not saying that's what happened now. And so there needs to be an immediate resolution of it. An airworthiness directive will be issued in collaboration with the manufacturer, and then we make sure fleet-wide that is done. If it has something to do with our procedures and policies, that needs to be addressed immediately. It is sent to higher command. It is, issued, it percolates down to the various squadrons, and then maybe through training or changes in procedure, those are implemented immediately whilst the investigation goes on and we await the final report.
How much of a leverage would be put on the eyewitness account or eyewitnesses account of what happened? Because a lot of reference has been made to some of the residents in this community, Brofiedu area, saying they saw this helicopter flying at a very low altitude. Then an MP references another eyewitness saying it blasted in the air and so on. How much reference and reliance will be put on eyewitness reports in this entire investigation process?
Thank you very much. So, like I stated earlier, eyewitness accounts, hey, they are just one part of the tapestry that we are weaving. Okay, they are one data point, and like I've stated earlier that they tend not to be the most credible. So what we do is that, they saw the aircraft flying low. What do you mean by low? How do you guesstimate low? And so that is where maybe like the information that we extract from the flight data recorder would validate whatever if numerous eyewitnesses were saying, we think that we estimate that it was flying so low that I could see maybe a high ground and the aircraft seems to be below maybe the highest peak of the high ground. Then we go to the flight data recorder, which will capture at that point, we'll ask them, at what time did you see it? It was at maybe 8:55, around 8:55. Remember, the flight data recorder has what we call timestamps. So we check at 8:55, what did the flight data recorder come up with? It will say that the aircraft was flying at 850 feet. Maybe the mountain is 1,000 and 1,100 at that particular geographic location. So then we realized that there is a possibility that what the eyewitness was saying compared to what is captured, which is factual data from the flight data recorder, estimating that at that geographic position, at that particular timestamp, the aircraft was at this speed, was at this altitude. So it makes sense. It is plausible. So somehow, in terms of trustworthiness, in terms of authentication, they are almost correlated. And that's how we sort of assess eyewitness account. If there was an explosion, like I've stated earlier, normally in-flight breakups due to an explosive event, they are the telltale capture signs, even from the wreckage itself. One of the things that investigators will be looking at, everything is on the table. So obviously, if there is suspected sabotage, they will analyze the wreckage for what we call forensic explosive debris. Okay, that will be tested. I know my colleague here, the forensic analyst, is here. We check it, and we want to rule out sabotage, because if there was an explosive event, then the investigation might shift to a criminal investigation, because it's a potentially criminal act, and that has to be dealt with by maybe the Ghana Armed Forces, military police, CID, BNI. They will have to come in. So once we've ruled that out, we've tested, and there's no sign of explosive chemical residue. If there was an explosion, in-flight explosion, even the wreckage diagram, the spread of the wreckage, will give us an idea. And the last point is the cockpit voice recorder. Normally, if there's an in-flight explosion, such that, remember, helicopter in this case is not too highly pressurized, okay? But then even the acoustic sound signature or pattern, when we take it to the lab, we know how the normal acoustic sound of maybe a Z9 helicopter should pan out when we put it in a software and we are viewing it acoustically and visually. So if there was an in-flight breakup, you realize that at the point of the explosion, of course, the acoustic signal is going to show some excessive peak, which is consistent with such an event. And that is how we're able to either rule out or to be able to consider it as a potential cause and add it to our analysis.
I see. So at the starting point of the investigation, all possibilities are on the table. You don't rule out anything.
Everything is on the table for the accident investigator. Your hat is on. All biases are to the side. We consider everything. We keep ruling it out based on the strength of the evidence. Everything is on the table.
How has that act of moving the debris from its original position, I mean, we saw the residents take some parts of it home. In fact, there's been an appeal, a cash reward for them to return it. Has that compromised the investigation at the crash site in any way? Or there could be remedial measures?
Well, yes. I mean, in the ideal world, I've stated it earlier that we want the crash site to be secured. We don't want folks to tamper with. And one of the key information we want to send out to the public is that an aircraft crash site is hazardous. Not because, even for the first respondent, anytime you have metals, especially aircraft components, post-crash fire, burning aircraft components, there are some physical and chemical changes that takes place. And especially if you have parts that are composite, materials. These composite material, even touching it with your hands, just bare hands, it could potentially be, have an effect on the individual touching it. There could be sharp points that will cut an individual. And so we want to appeal to these people that, hey, these are a potentially hazardous component that you've taken home. You don't want it to later lead to you, getting ill or something because you touch. There might be biohazards, and the whole site itself, it's not something that should be handled just like that. As investigators, we go there with biohazard suits and stuff based on the components that got burnt. Some metals, when they burn, you don't want to be touching them like that. We will still appeal to those who have taken part that, hey, we want you to bring it back. We understand, yes, sometimes we are curious. We want to take things away. I think criminalizing it may not be helpful. Rather, incentivizing it might be the better idea. Incentivize it. Tell them that, hey, if you took something, you bring it back. I mean, we have an incentive for you so that we get everything back. And then if we have to do a physical reconstruction of the helicopter in the hangar, we have most of the components. On the other hand, there might be components that will be way out in the forest that's scattered that we'll never be able to find it. But guess what? We will be able to have enough from the flight data recorder and the remaining wreckage and the documentary analysis and the interviews and the pilot's record, medical records, psychological analysis based on interviews with colleagues, standard operating procedures, to be able to at least develop a plausible theory or hypothesis, and then out of it come up with cause and contributory factors. So If we get all the parts, that is fine. But if you are not able to get everything, that doesn't mean that investigators can still not go ahead and be able to do a thorough and comprehensive data-driven job.
Professor Jacom, great stuff. And there's a reference that you keep making to the data that has to be used to drive this investigation, which you say we have to be patient, all things being equal, within 1 year, all things being equal, we would get to know what the outcome of the investigation is. But Kenna, with what was retrieved from this crashed Z9 helicopter, was it a black box as we know it, or as you know it?
Well, what I've been told is that probably per the manufacturer is designated as an anti-crash recorder.
Anti-crash recorder.
But technically, the anti-crash recorder has two composites. It's got a cockpit voice recorder, then it's got a flight data recorder. So in a way, it is still a black box, except that the manufacturer says that this is an anti-crash recorder. Okay. I'm also told that that particular anti-crash recorder or black box only records the last 30 minutes before an incident.
The last 30 minutes?
So we're not going to get the data from takeoff 0912, but we're going to get the data 30 minutes before impact, which is still critical, still significant, you know.
I see.
But I'm told that there are differences in these flight recorders. And this particular model is about 30 minutes.
It records what happened.
Recorded data.
30 minutes before the crash.
Before the crash.
That what kind of data is recorded in there? Is it the interaction between?
Yeah, Prof has explained. He called it parameters, flight parameters. So the azimuth or the bearing, the altitude above mean sea level, the speed of the aircraft, and so on and so forth.
I see.
You know, the state of the engine, how well the engine was functioning.
Right.
Anything connected with the performance of the aircraft will be on that material. Plus the conversations in the cockpit. Let's assume that the minister was invited, one of them, to come to the cockpit, and the captain can do that. That conversation will be captured. Right. When the Kumasi mayor said on a certain platform that I was with, Addo, he was saying that somebody at Obuasi has spoken with my namesake, Dr. Samuel Abuaji. Now, if that person went and spoke with a pilot about the information that, or if Dr. Abuaji had gone to the pilot to convey that information, that would also be on the flight data recorder. You know, and I've suggested that that person or the Kumasi mayor should tell the person to go to the investigator and tell them that we spoke with somebody on the flight. The time, as Dr. is saying, Prof is saying, that time would suggest that at that time the plane was good to fly.
Because the reading was that it said the conversation between them lasted 16 seconds, and that Samuel Abuaji, that's the
even on his phone.
Deputy NADMO coordinator.
Yeah, on his phone at Obuasi, the record will be there. That's so and so time you called this number. We can retrieve some of that information even from NTN or Vodacom. But the MC, whoever should make available the information, including the phone, you know, to aid the investigations.
See, now, Prof. Jonathan, Dr. Jonathan, I beg your pardon. That's why I bring you in. What kind of forensic analysis beyond that?
We ain't some who team course watching on some amount of soldier ever had a sense of what in their don't be a dominion. And we ain't shame, then sign some more question.